Hello, hello, hello. What's up, guys? Node Investor here. Time for another look at these markets. It's a red day today. Bitcoin under $9,000, 89.80 as I speak. The pullback has continued to play out as expected for the most part. We saw this coming here about a week and a half ago. Started talking about how it's likely the pullback that we were looking for. Expected to see some pulling in for about a week or two, and here we are approaching about a week and a half now, and still playing out. But we're starting to hit some interesting levels here, both on technical, near-term, RSI and all that good stuff, moving averages, as well as some bigger picture levels, some support zones that I'm keeping an eye on. So I'm going to go over all of that today, kind of cover some key points. What am I doing here? What am I thinking? I covered my shorts. That sounds funny. I covered my shorts. Covered my short trades, the last of them yesterday. And honestly, probably a little bit too soon. It was late in my day. I was expecting it to crack that 9,200 all day yesterday. It finally did later in the evening. But I had already started to scale out. And so, I missed the last little bit of this drop, but no big deal. But look at this. Coming into the zones I was looking at, here's ETH. Who would have thought? ETH 220s. Nobody believed it. Nobody wanted to hear that, but here we are, ETH 220s. Bitcoin back under 9K. And so these are interesting times. The stock market is bouncing here a little bit today. I traded a little to the long side, did some AMD, some Moderna, which is a coronavirus vaccine company, getting a little bit of play there. And so had some pretty quick trades to the upside, call it a day, hit my targets, and I'm good to go. But so looking at the BTC side, here's the Ethereum chart. Another point of view there, right? It's this symmetrical triangle finally breaking down yesterday, and measured move target on that puts it right around 216. We're pretty much there, 223. So a lot of stuff breaking to the downside. I'm going to give it a minute here. Let's see who's joining the stream here. We've got folks from all over. We've got Austria, Spain in the house, Brazil, India, Delhi. Welcome. So yeah, this is, man, getting interesting with the whole global economy and the markets. Crypto finally kind of pulling in as well. So what is going on out there, man? Now, do we have to put up with it? I hope not. I don't think we're going to see another 2-year bear market, personally. God, I hope not. But I don't think we will. Virgin Islands, nice. Might have to just do a stream from the Virgin Islands next time. Right. So let's get to it here. Looking at the Node Insiders site, if you're not familiar with this, nodeinsiders.com. I've got some proprietary indicators that I've developed. The BMI, the Bull Momentum Index, some proprietary trading strategies for both the 4-hour and the daily time frames based on that, as well as some alerts and some trending names and all that stuff. Not a lot on the list here today, of course, with the broader market pulling back. And so this is kind of expected. AION, surprising move to the upside. But you can see here the charts, the oversold alerts are really spiking now. It's a little bit of a change from what we saw just even a week ago, where things were still in the overbought camp. Now we're seeing the oversolds really spike. And so just kind of painting the picture of what is going on out there. Going to the BTC dominance here. Wow, Bitcoin hitting 8,900 here soon. Going to the BTC dominance. I expected that in the event of a pullback, which was likely, we'd see the BTC dominance continue to bounce, meaning the altcoins would underperform. And that's what we're seeing here. So this is what I'm looking for right now on the BTC dominance side of things. I was looking for around 62%, which we basically went to almost to the penny there. And then I was thinking we'd bounce. And on the bounce side, I'm looking for, 66 to maybe 68% on the BTC dominance. And then at that point, perhaps we start to see the altcoins start to lead again. And that may coincide with the bottom in the Bitcoin chart, maybe not, but I'm thinking we start to see the rotation back from BTC into the alts in and around that level. And we're seeing that, right? And I think this is, in the longer term, a big picture view, I think this is a good opportunity to start looking at what are those alts that are strong, that you like, that are going to potentially outperform heading into the halving. And this may be some good pullback entry points to start paying attention to. And so we're seeing that BTC dominance spike again, back, well, not spike, but bounce. Let me call it bounce again. And back to that 66% here. So we'll see how much higher it can go. 66, I'm thinking as high as maybe 68. But we're starting to get to that point now. And now the question is, do we start looking for the dip buy entries? Going to the coin market cap. The coin market cap has now pulled back into that first major support zone, which were these prior highs, in and around that $250 billion mark. We are at 245 right now. So kind of hitting a key level here. This would be a good time to potentially show some bounce action here, but we'll have to wait and see until this plays out. You know, because these at the very end of these kind of moves, you get these big dips, these kind of the volume spikes, you get the climactic move down, the capitulation, if you will, right? The last of the buyers or holders are kind of throwing in the towel, stops are starting to get hit, and so it's no telling, you know, how low it drops. It can be very sudden, very quick, but very often the reaction back to the upside is just as dramatic on the low, and then you kind of get some sideways, maybe some backfilling, some higher lows, double bottom type action, and then it really starts to move, grind higher from that point, right? That's generally the way it plays out. You've seen it back here, right? You had this big spike, gets very choppy, and then it kind of starts to flatten out before you really start hitting the uptrend again. The fact, though, that we're coming off of a prior uptrend, and now you're getting the pullback, you know, you're looking for a little bit of a bounce, a low. The sideways action won't be as long as this, in my opinion, because this is kind of leg one on the uptrend. This is the pullback. You might get a little bit of a pause and then get going again. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. It's just a matter of at what price, right? At what point do we finally start to see the dip action start to bottom out here? But here we are, 8,900. Now, to be clear, I have started the toe dipping. I've started to put my toes in the water here a little bit to the long side, mostly because I'm starting to see the 4-hour chart start to spike on the volume here as we hit these oversold conditions. I am not going aggressive just yet. I'm not looking at the alt. It's primarily just BTC. And I've got some buffer considering I've played a lot of the short side. I've been more active on the scalps than I have in recent weeks. I kind of took the short, quick bounce trade, did a little bit of avoiding for the weekend here, but yesterday not yesterday, but over the weekend when things started to break down, caught this leg down here as well on the short and on each side as well. But you know, I got out a little bit too early. I was waiting for it to crack 9,200 yesterday. Finally did. I thought maybe we'd bounce from there, but missed this last little bit down. No big deal. I'm just gonna, you know, it's always kind of comfortable to be just on the sidelines waiting for things to play out. Your perspective's a little bit more clear when you look at it that way. If you're looking at this big pattern as kind of a inverse head and shoulder or something like that, then you know there's a couple ways to do it. But if you did a measured move from here, and again I'm using more the fib retracement levels and the support zones as my targets, not necessarily these moving measured moves, but if you did that and extrapolate down, this is pointing to around 8,800, so that's kind of interesting to see that. Now going to the fib levels that I've marked out here, shout out from Toronto, thanks for being here, Toronto, Canada, beautiful city. So looking at the fib levels, so what I've been using is the swing low from the January 2nd start to this top, and let me move my chart down so I can get to the top there. And so I've been using this point here, and this has just kind of been my point of view. And so using these fib levels as my guides, and then lining that up with some support zones. The first big zone was the 382. Not much of a bounce from there, 91.50, and I was just using that as my target zone on the way down from the short trade. I was using that as my, I'm going to start to cover at that point, and it hit that, but hasn't really bounced yet. And as far as like looking at buy entries, we're in what I would call the buy zone, right? And let me highlight that, right? This basically the levels between this fib level and this fib level. This is what I'm looking at as the potential buy zone. And it's a wide zone, admittedly, right? You're talking about $1,000 range between that 9150 down to 8200. But this is where you want to see the bounce start to hold if we're going to that big inverse head and shoulder pattern is going to play out. If that's going to play out and you're still bullish and you're looking at the long term 2020, the halving, all that fun stuff, and we're thinking ultimately price is going to take out that 14K and then go higher, then in the big picture, this is where we want to see that bounce start to play out. This is where we want to see the buyers, the consolidation here at the lows and all that reversal start to happening. How low does it go? Again, it's anyone's guess. I'm just looking at these as key levels. So if you want to really inspect it, the next level down is basically this 88 to 8600. And then below that, the most that I want to see this thing drop is 8200. After that, that pullback starts to look a little too deep, in my opinion, and really starts to make this pattern a little bit flawed. And the pattern I'm talking about here is, let me zoom out here for you guys, is this big inverse head and shoulder here. And so the neckline essentially would be, this most recent resistance band here. You've got the left shoulder being this big price structure there, the head being its own little mini inverse head and shoulder there on the daily chart. And then what I'm looking for is this pullback that lands somewhere in and around here and starts to form some sort of consolidation and then a bounce. And the reason I don't want it to see it go too much further than that, because one, if this right shoulder is a little bit higher than the left shoulder, that's much more positive. You can see the real low, the left shoulder was around 7,800. You had that quick washout, but that was where a lot of support started to form. You want that to typically be a little bit higher than that. 8,200, maybe 81. That's also, if you look left, that's going to take it all the way back to this prior breakout point. So it's just generally bearish if you retrace that far, because it just goes to show the lack of buying support stepping in. So that's why I'm saying I want to see this thing start to hold above this point, and hence that's where I've marked out the buy zone, if you will. That's basically what I'm looking at it as, is a potential buy zone where you want to see the support start to come in here on this daily chart. But for now, the pullback continues. So much for that golden cross, huh? Everybody was yamming about that on Twitter and the golden cross, and here we go, and yada yada yada. And as is often the case, it turned out to be a little bit of a turning point, an inverse turning point. And that's why I don't really use that as a metric. I don't really care. By the time you get the golden cross or the death cross, it's too late. The signal is just more confirmation than it is a signal. And so that's why I tend to use shorter time frames. I do pay attention to those longer moving averages, but I don't use them by any means as a end all be all. But if we throw that 200-day moving average on here, this is interesting to see that it's basically right here at 87.85, right where price is at. And so that's right smack in the middle of this big buy zone that I'm looking for here, and where I'm wanting to see this bounce start to hold. So going to be interesting to see. Well, maybe not that far. That's an ugly circle. There we go. Here we go. Something like that. So that's what I'm looking for there. 200-day moving average, 88.34. Again, I'm not getting too aggressive yet, but I am starting to catch the falling knife, if you will, but not on a large scale, because, like I said, these can get a little climactic to the downside, and you just never know, right? Usually that's not my style. I generally just tend to wait for the reversal, and I don't really care to catch the exact bottom or get out at the exact top. I look for the broader change in trend, and then I start to get more aggressive on that way. And it's more about being in at the right time, meaning when the momentum is in your way, versus being right and perfect and getting the exact bottom and top. Nobody cares about getting the exact bottom and top. It's more about getting in when the momentum's shifting. And these last couple of days have been a fantastic short opportunity, and we saw it coming. And when you look at the big picture, going back to the daily chart, and that daily chart is just looking pretty brutal now, but let me take this off here. We saw it coming, right? We had the big turn. Oops, where is it here? The big turn. Then you had the dip, then you had a bounce, made a lower high, and then a big ugly reversal here on the downside, which really just confirmed it. You had the volume spike on that side. Over the weekend, a little bit of bear flaggish. And then this was a little bit of a surprise pop right to 90, almost 10K, but it was quickly sold off, and that just solidified the trend because then that marked out another lower high. And so the chance that you were going to undercut this low was very high at that point. You could have had a double bottom and then a bounce. That would have been ideal. But once you had this kind of 3 drives down, then you're looking for that big crack. There was also this big descending triangle pattern that just kind of really made it clear. And as I posted like in the Slack group, and maybe I covered it this weekend. Did I cover it on Monday? Probably did. But I said, we were going to see this resolve itself one way or the other here in the next coming days. And of course we did 2 days later, but odds favored that it was going to crack to the downside, and it did. I mean, that's generally the way those patterns play out, but it could have gone either way, to be fair, but I was going to wait until it actually started to take out that 9,900 or something before I got really aggressive. But, descending triangle pattern, certainly that played out. If you're doing a measured move on that bad boy there, I would have done something like this, extrapolated that, target down to oops, not that. This guy here, and that puts you basically where we're at right now, right around 8,800. So that's interesting to see that play out the way it has. But here we go. I'm seeing the volume spike. This is getting interesting. Kind of watching this is getting a little climactic. How low does it go? Again, these are some near-term targets to be watching, but I am going to do a little toe dipping. If nothing else, at least for a little bit of an oversold bounce trade. On the way up, prior support, 9150, 9200 is going to be your first target. And then after that, 9500 is your next resistance level on any sort of bounce. But, generally the way it plays out is you get either one of two things is what I tend to look for. The big kind of washout bottom, which results in a dragonfly doji or some sort of hammer reversal candle, or the big bullish engulfing candle, meaning if this turns, say the next candle undercuts it and then it ends higher than this one on very strong volume, those tend to mark some important turning points. And so then at that point, I start looking a little bit more aggressively at a bounce trade. At this point, this is just kind of more, it's getting climactic to the downside, potentially due for a bounce, but we got to wait. So we'll see how that goes. But, doing some toe dipping here, trying to start scaling in, but, mostly just keeping the pulse on the market, seeing how things play out. What about the altcoins? So my thought process right now is, okay, going back to that BTC dominance chart, Bitcoin's going to outperform on this pullback, which is expected, and we're seeing that, right? We're seeing that BTC dominance spike. It hit 66, kind of what I was looking for, maybe 67, 68 on the upside, but we're starting to get to that point. And so my thought process is when this settles out, when the dust settles and things start to bottom out and resume, which are those alts that are going to outperform to the upside, and what are those names? And so that's kind of what I'm starting to look at now. At this point, I'm not jumping in any alts aggressively or anything. I'm just kind of toe dipping back into Bitcoin here. On the short side, there's been some good short trades, but after the move down, I'm not too inclined to play the short trade anymore. Could we see more downside? Yes. But I think we've had a good run. The risk is a little bit higher of getting that quick short squeeze pop to the upside. So that's why I'm kind of not so inclined to trade the short anymore. I'd rather just either be flat or maybe bouncing a little bit on the bounce trades. But Tezos, for example, was one that's pulled back. And yes, much to the chagrins of those people who got very angry when I posted that chart saying Tezos is probably due for a pullback, there it is. You get your pullback. So I hope you didn't FOMO in at $4. And now you've got a good opportunity if you really wanted some Tezos to get in at a much better price, 30+% discount from the all-time highs, which is here. So, you've had a decent pullback versus Bitcoin. And this is one that's I'm watching, right? This is a good candidate. Has been very strong, was at the new highs here on the dollar chart. So definitely one to watch here on the pullback. If I do some retracement levels here, there's two ways to look at it. I'm going to go from this swing high to that one. But the 618 puts you right at this prior high, this December high. So that's going to be an interesting point. It's also right at the 50% on the pullback now versus Bitcoin. So this is one for a potential watch candidates on a bounce. Tezos USD here, a little bit further down. Let me pull this off here. Didn't hold that support from yesterday. So let me take these bad boys off there. And there's really not a lot of horizontal price support for quite some time. So I wouldn't necessarily be banking on a full retracement down to $1.85. And in fact, if it did go that low, that actually would be quite bearish. Not so sure I'd take that dip buy at that point. But look at the volume here, man. There's a lot of selling on the last 3 days. Volume continues to squeeze to the upside here. But doing the same kind of analysis, maybe a fib retracement level. Let me pull up the longer term moving average on this guy too. You're at the 50%, maybe the 618 puts it at around $2.30. So in and around there would be an interesting place to start watching for some support to show up. Let me add the longer term moving average. Where's the 200-day on this guy? Does it even have a 200-day? It might not. It might not on Binance. That's why it doesn't, because of the time frame. 50 EMA. So looking at the 50 EMA, that's puts it at around $2.40. So we're kind of in that little bit of a support zone. That's where I'd like to see Tezos jump if it's going to start to hold. So from that perspective, that's what I'd be looking for. So kind of putting the hat on as far as, here's the thesis, right? Bitcoin's outperforming right now, but when this pullback ends, I think the altcoins resume their outperformance, and you see this Bitcoin dominance ultimately drop and then make a new relative low, so meaning it undercuts 62%. And so with that in mind, then I'm going to be thinking, okay, what are those alts to be watching to the upside? Tezos is probably a good candidate. ETH, I think, is still a very good candidate. If we look at ETH BTC here, it has been very strong, especially as of late, right? It was kind of going climactic there. Got very choppy here near the highs. It would have been nice if it held. Obviously it didn't, but it would have been nice if it held this kind of pattern here and set up for a big ascending base. But now that you've got the pullback, I mean, it's barely now getting to the daily 22 EMA. So it hasn't even really been that big of a pullback. Sorry about all my lines here. Let me take this guy off. Try to keep the charts clean for you guys. And you are getting that big spike in volume here today. So very interesting to see that. But, there's not a lot of support here along the way other than this 22 EMA. If it bounces from here, maybe 2,300 on the BTC pair. I personally wouldn't want to see it get that low. I'd rather just see it start to chop around here and base out. But this could be another one to be watching on the upside. Binance coin has really given it up here. Quick pullback right back to support here. So, man, I mean, that's a big retracement there on Binance. IOTA, is it officially dead? I mean, is IOTA over? Is it toast? Oh, man, that project has had so much trouble here as of late. I mean, the Eiffel Tower here, the wallet freezing, just, yeesh. The dumpage continues on the IOTA. Link is a good one right here. So I'm going to zoom out here on Link. This big daily pattern that's set up, we finally saw that breakout. Getting almost a perfect throwback on that pattern here. So let me zoom in for you guys. Yesterday, late yesterday, I guess today's daily candle, I mean, it dipped right to the line. So if it can start to consolidate above this line, that's a great throwback entry, nice pullback. And the reason I like these better is because instead of buying, after a big upswing, I mean, almost always, you don't get it always, but almost always, you can bet on a dip or a pullback. And if you miss it, you miss it, right? But sometimes when you do get those dip pullback entries, from a trading perspective, they just make for a better risk-reward entry because you're a little bit closer to support. You don't have to give it much more room to the downside if you know you're wrong, right? So you can pull the chute, if you will, a little bit closer. Versus when you're buying up here, even a normal pullback could expose you to 15, 20% to the downside. And so are you willing to take that much pain and still give it room to run, right? So that's kind of the difference there. And if you're buying up there, obviously you want a smaller position versus then when you're buying right close to support, you can keep a tighter stop, translates into a bigger net position because your risk-reward ratio is better. So Link is an interesting one here as it pulls back. What were some of the other ones that I was watching here? Let me go to the chart here. Looking at the AION, that had a crazy move. But looking at the bot status here, just weak, red across the board. And again, keep in mind this is relative to Bitcoin. So this is the altcoin Bitcoin pairs. And there's only one that's long, surprisingly. ETH is still showing long. the trading bot on the daily status, but everything else is flat or short. And so just kind of highlighting where we are right now. That's the tone of the markets. The trading bot on the 4-hour surprisingly went short yesterday. I was like, really? At this point? So it's kind of interesting. It's been flat for some time, though, mostly flat, but caught a little bit of the short there apparently. So that's where we're at. Let's see here, bouncing a little bit. I'm going to go to that short-term chart here. Look at that big volume spike on that last 30-minute candle here when I started the stream. Quick reversal. If it starts to get back above 9100, 9200, then I would expect kind of a quick short covering rally. And then at that point, you know, that's your resistance, right? 9200, and then 9500 is kind of the next level to be watching on the upside there. All right. So I've been rambling here for a little bit now. Thank you guys for coming in. Let's look at the charts here. We got Sydney in the house. Right. IOTA has been dead since 2017. Oh, man. Long squeeze possible. Italy. So looking at the stocks real quick here. There was a couple of trades that I took here. There's one that's interesting right now. Called Moderna Inc. I don't even know if that's how you say it, but it's been rallying here as of late. This is a coronavirus play, if you will. They are probably making the most headway. Gilead is another one, but they're making the most headway on a potential vaccine, and so they've been getting a lot of upside here in the near term. But keep in mind, those vaccine plays, by the time the vaccines actually hit the market at any mass scale, like, it's already all priced in. So this is very much a, you know, sell the news type of thing. So you're getting the front running here very early on. So it's kind of interesting to see. But they've had a pretty interesting spike here the last couple of days. Been trading that one a little bit. And then Apple is bouncing here after getting smacked the last couple of days. Quite the pullback. A decent little bounce here today off of that 285 to 298. Now, I know that doesn't look like a lot, and you're thinking, what? That's nothing, right? That's a 4% bounce. But when you're talking about $11 for a stock, when typically when I do day trading, you know, you're using like 4-to-1 leverage on some of these moves. It adds up real quick, right? A couple hundred shares on something like this, those little dollar moves really add up. So that's a pretty significant move. AMD was another one I was looking at here today. Not quite as strong, but the chip names are starting to bounce here a little bit. NVIDIA has been a market leader as of late. Seen a pretty nice little bounce here off the lows. And the chip names were hit particularly hard because, you know, they had the big run up, but then with all the closures in the factories, there's concern about hitting supply chain, which would ultimately impact inventory, hence revenue will be falling short of expectations. So that's why the chip names took such a hit. The other ones, of course, the cruise lines and some of the travel stuff, of course they got hit. Nobody wants to be stuck on a ship that's like the death ship when you can't even get off, and even if you're not infected, it's like the infection is just spreading like wildfire. Can you imagine how scary that would be? That's turning people away from a lot of those cruise lines because holy moly. That'd be like the worst case scenario. You're on a ship on a vacation, and then they're like, oh, someone's sick on the ship, and they're quarantining the ship, and next thing you know, like left and right, everybody starts getting sick. So anyway, you're getting that big sell-off on the cruise ships. That's going to absolutely impact their longer-term revenue, at least for the next year or two, right? Because people are going to still be kind of freaking out about that until we get the whole virus thing under control, which is nowhere near under control yet. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the broader markets. They're going to gold. Gold pulling back here a little bit, but kind of just getting choppy at the highs here. Hit 1,700 earlier in the week. Seen a little bit of a pause, pullback. Ultimately, I think gold hits 1,800. And then from there, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But looking at the big picture, go to the weekly chart on gold. Now, this is what I'm looking at, right? First target, about 1,800, then maybe 19. That'd be new highs at that point. But if it gets that high, you want to see a little bit of a consolidation for a few months. And then a breakout. That'd be interesting to see gold over 2,000 bucks, wouldn't it? So those are my thoughts very quickly on the broader markets. the quote-unquote legacy markets, as people like to say. But going back to the BTC chart, very much seeing this spike down. I'm going to go to the 4-hour view real quick here. Zoom in for us. And if you're just catching the stream, I've outlined some key levels that I've been watching on the way down, and we're basically approaching the middle of this, what I'm calling the buy zone. And what I mean by that, just to kind of rehash for those of you that are joining late, what I mean by that is we've had the big rally. On the pullback, I wanted to see this level start to hold if that bigger picture inverse head and shoulder is going to play out. If that's going to play out, that's what you want to see. This zone here is where you want to see the buying start stepping in, where you want to see the reversal on the daily chart start to play out, because then that really sets up a very strong, very bullish picture, which ultimately I expect, ultimately I expect would lead to a very nice end of 2020 for Bitcoin, right? And by that I mean this big reversal right here over 10K, right? 10.5, we've wicked above it, but this big inverse head and shoulder pattern kind of leading into the halvening would make for a really nice breakout, and the target on that breakout would basically be 14K. And you know my thoughts on that. If we break 14K, there's been very little time in the history of Bitcoin traded really above 11 or 12K. So anything above this, then it's not going to be much resistance. Everyone's going to be in the green at that point. All long-term holders will be made whole, and there's going to be really no resistance, and things could really start to take off at that point. Absolutely, the media will be all over this. It'll be kind of the next euphoria. Oh my God, Bitcoin's going to 20, Bitcoin's going to 50,000. You know, you're going to start to see those wild numbers being thrown out there again. And so that's going to be interesting. Again, of course, that's the big if, right? Do we get this big pattern playing out? I really hope so. I really hope we do, and we kind of get that big breakout, because then the longer term view looks very positive from that perspective. So that's why I'm calling it the buy zone. It's kind of nice to see a little bit of a pullback for once. I think it's a healthy pullback. It was much needed, and it did a lot to kind of erase the euphoria that we've been seeing here for the last 2 weeks. It was getting very climactic. Suddenly everyone was a genius. Oh my God, look at this. I called it. Now it's going up. Everything's going up. Yes, of course. It's the high correlation in the space. Everyone's a genius, but it's always interesting to see it play out. So the pullbacks are healthy. Now the question is, where do we land, and at what point are you guys going to start buying in? Yes, that's a big zone. Admittedly, it's a big zone. And I'm not gonna be one of those that proclaim to know exactly where the price is gonna bottom. It's gonna come exactly right to 86, 80, and 77 cents and find a low and start to bounce. Because I mean, honestly, that's not how I'm playing it, right? I'm looking at this as, okay, this is where I'm gonna start really paying attention for some signs of reversal. Where that shows up and how that shows up is going to be a couple of different ways, whether it's that kind of climactic reversal, you get the big doji reversal bar, or is it kind of the slow grind, you get the double bottom, the bouncing, and then the quick spike up, right? So there's a couple ways it could play out. And yeah, absolutely, it's a big zone, no doubt. It's $1,000 zone, but in the big scheme of things, you know, price really does get to where it's going to go, then that's going to be a small zone, relatively speaking. But hey, the pullback has played out. If you've been short, congratulations. If you've been long, I know that's painful. It's been just grinding lower. Any other alts you guys want to look at here before we kind of start to wrap this up? Let me pull up my notes here and drop some thoughts here. So if you've just joined us, it's mostly been kind of the macro view. I've been covering the big picture, primarily looking at the dominance chart, the market, total market cap. Quickly scanned a few names. We looked at ETH, we looked at Tezos, we looked at, what was it? Link, IOTA, a handful of names. But let's kind of deep dive a little bit. So we'll look at a few before I wrap it up here. Raven Bat. Node investor, blast from the past. Thanks for being here. I know a lot of you guys have been here with me for quite some time, and I really appreciate that. Algo, yeah, let's go look at Algo. Sorry about the radio silence. I'm just kind of catching up on the comments here. 27K will come faster than anyone thinks. Hey, you never know. That would be real interesting. Could it happen in 2020? Maybe. All right. How far down do you think we're going to go down? In Bitcoin, I don't want to see it drop below 8,200. If it does, I mean, if it continues to drop, 8,200, 8,000, just starts to look real bearish. Because, let me go back to the chart here. I'm going to zoom in. Sorry about all the wiggling around here. I'll settle out. So if you look at the big inverse head and shoulder reversal that played out here in December, there's a couple of zones, right? The first breakout zone was this here, around 7,600. A retrace of that level would be very bearish because it's just kind of given up most of the move at that point. But then you had this little base, and it popped above that point there. And that's really the max that I want to see it retest if it continues to drop. That's also a significant fib retracement level, the 618. Generally speaking, on a pullback after a big move up, if it stays above the 618 and starts to bounce from there, you can technically still say, okay, the uptrend is kind of held. This is a big retracement. It's a golden ratio. And now you're looking for a bounce at that point, right? So, you know, basically in and around here is where I'm looking for that low, if you will, or the support to start showing up. I'm not looking for a V bottom. I'm not thinking we drop and then it's just like straight up, you know, straight to the races after that point. It's like straight down, straight up. That's not generally the way it works. You'll get the bounce, you get a little rally, maybe some backfill in, maybe it undercuts the low to shake some longs out, and then it gets going. Much like we saw back here. Remember this move back here where we found low and then it bounced around for a few days, a few weeks in fact, and then it looked like this was it, and then all of a sudden just cracked. Oh boy, here we go, and then out of nowhere 40% move to the upside, just craziness. Then back here, look at this kind of choppy action, right? So that's kind of what I tend to look for. Along the way, yeah, there's the chop. But just keep in mind, right? Like, there's three things that the market does at any one time. It either goes sideways, or starts to trend, or transitions again, right? Or it starts to drop, right? And those transition points, those turning points, are very choppy. And you tend, if you overtrade those, you tend to give back a lot of the prior gains because you get stopped out, then you see it bounce, and you get back in, then you get stopped out again, then you see it bounce, and you get back in, and by the time it's all settled out, you've given back quite a bit because you've been caught in the chop, right? And so, and it's not easy because, you know, it's always clear hindsight, but in the middle of it, you don't know if it's just another one of these dips, and by the dips work, or if it's finally one of those ones that it doesn't work and things start to really turn and break down. And so we kind of knew that, you know, this was happening. We saw the lower trend line, that rising wedge finally crack. So there's been some clues along the way that led us to kind of believe, hey, this is probably the one that pulls back. And turns out now that we see it in hindsight, yep, it was, right? It was the one that pulled back. The RSI was crazy. Altcoins were going through the moon, and everyone was right, and the euphoria was rampant. And rightly so, but you know, you just learn from experience. You start paying attention to those type of signs and thinking, we're probably getting close, right? It's just always hard to guess the exact when. You just know that we're getting close here. All right, so let's see here. 87.68. Anybody buying here? Any dip buyers in the house? Where are we at? What's the RSI look like? That 4-hour RSI is really starting to hit the lows here, hitting 20. On the 1 hour, we've been in the oversold camp for a little bit, bouncing right back here. Volume on that 1 hour candle is really picking up. Look at that. Look at that volume here. In the last hour, man, that dropped from 9K to 87. People are dumping. The blood is in the streets. Herman in the house. So when it comes to dip buying, to knife catching, I don't recommend it. But if you're going to do it, definitely don't go all in one shot. You kind of want to save some bullets, if you will. You know, keep some dry powder handy because you just never know. Toe dip, right? Dip the toes in slowly, or you just wait it out and just say forget it. I'm just gonna wait for this thing to play out and then settle out. Oh, there you go. ETH hitting my target on the downside. 215. ETH. Oh my goodness. $200 ETH. Who would have thunk? Told you. Not that bad. Oh, look at that. Mana, Decentraland smacking, hitting the target to the downside in the high threes. Tezos. I'm still watching that one for a bounce. Neo. Wowzers. Undercutting that $11 mark on a Neo. Litecoin. Litecoin's right back to the breakout point there. Interesting level to be watching. Litecoin right at $60. I might have to do a little bit more dip buying here, guys. It's getting climactic. Thinking we get a little bounce. Binance coin, 18 bucks. Algorand. AION BTC was bouncing yesterday. It was a nice pullback entry. I didn't do anything with it, but that was a nice nice pullback entry here. Look at this. Had that break of the downtrend, rallied right to the prior highs, pulled back almost perfectly to the line, and then boom, big spike. But didn't do anything with that one. Atom, well, that one never played out. I was looking at Cosmos as a potential candidate for a reversal. It's been in the big downtrend, and I was thinking this one maybe is finally due for some catch up. But no dice, bounced right to the line and just totally gave it back up. I was looking at it more from the USD pair. That was more my signal. I wanted to see it crack that $5 mark and start holding above it. Couldn't, and look at that. Holy moly. Just quick drop down to $3.50. Yikes. A lot of these names are just holy moly. Dip buying time, anybody? Look at this. Raven pulling right back to the lows here. Back to the January lows versus BTC here. BAT. I was watching BAT here. I was liking it earlier. But I was kind of just watching this pullback here. But in the big scheme of things, let me zoom out here, go to the daily chart. You know, this is interesting here. Is this a double top here, or is this going to finally, you know, is this going to be the support? You're right at support. So if you like it, you know, that's where you start to pay attention to it, because you don't got to give it much to the downside to know that, nope, support's not going to hold, I'm wrong. Or you wait for one of those like fake out breakouts, and then once it pops back over the line, I like to jump in there just because it's already had the shakeout, and if it recovers quickly, then that's a good spot to look at it, because then you have a very clear stop, basically the swing low. Let's see what else. I think we looked at most of those. Algo. I gotta go back to that BTC chart because things are really going. Yeah, I definitely closed out my short too early. Would have been nice. And, you know, here was my thought process on closing out the shorts. So yesterday I was watching it. I was waiting for it to crack 9,200 all day. I was like, come on. It was just like that. No, not happening. It finally did. And then just kind of a quick spike. So when it finally cracked to 9,200, I was like, I'm done getting out of this thing. You know, 9,150 was my target. Then had that quick reversal. Thought, okay, maybe that was a good call. And then just smack. I lost patience. I was looking for ETH. I mean, ETH hit most of my targets, but I was thinking at most, like, I'll start covering ETH at around the 220s, 230s. Again, lost patience. Was waiting for it. It was like 230, 240, 240, and then finally rolling over. Big smackdown here, but not going to lie. Looks a little tempting. Looks a little tempting down at these levels here. The volume's really spiking, though. Good stuff. So let's take a quick break on all of this stuff here. If you're new to the channel or just joining, or maybe perhaps you're a long-time watcher but you're not familiar with the Node Insiders, proprietary alerts. So we got a trading bot strategy that we use, trending list names. These alerts come through here real time. You can see the oversold alerts are really spiking right now. Also got the trading bot status and the bull momentum index for all the kind of the big cap names here versus Bitcoin. as well as the Education Center, which is really just my video course library. And so if you're new to trading, new to technical analysis, this is where you want to start. You can check this out, nodeinsiders.com/education. There's a bunch of open videos that you don't have to be a subscriber to view, but it'll kind of give you a flavor for what to expect. But if you want to unlock all of them, you have to subscribe. If you're new to the channel and not sure what this is all about, I have a link in the video. Nodeinsiders.com is where you go, but learncryptotrading.info will tell you more about the site. And of course, you get access to the private Slack group, which is where I tend to be a little bit more active. I post my updates and my thoughts there almost daily, and just any ideas and stuff like that. There's a lot of really great people on that Slack channel and constantly sharing news and ideas and charts. So you would get access to that if you join here. So check that out, nodeinsiders.com. All right, where are we going here? Anything else, guys? Any other names? It's been quite the day. 8,700. Okay, whew, we're back. We're back above 8,700. Oh, nope, never mind. That's gone. Man, once it cracked that 9K, it was like, good night. Yeah, Link. I really like the relative strength in Link. That's going to probably be my first candidate on the alt side if it starts to get going. Look at that Link BTC chart holding up, showing some good relative strength here. Very nice. Who else? Who else is in the green today? Link. Oh, you can always get some Tether, True USD. It's a joke. That's a joke. Let's see who's down big. Zill down 15% versus Bitcoin. VeChain giving it up. VeChain. I was looking for a bounce off this line. VeChain, no love. And that's just the thing with this space. ETH, man. I'm really tempted to look at some ETH here. That's just the thing with this space is the high degree of correlation. When everything is strong, and everyone looks like a genius because it's like just about everything works. It's a matter of if, not when, your coin's going to break out. But when everything's pulling back, it's everything pulling back. I mean, there's maybe a handful of holdouts. There's always a handful of holdouts. But for the most part, everything pulls back. And so that's what makes it tough because they're just so highly correlated. And they follow Bitcoin for the most part. So if Bitcoin pulls back, then everything else pulls back, right? So that's what I'm looking at. That's why I watch the BTC chart so much. Massive dump incoming. I think this is the massive dump incoming. Pink. Yeah. What else? Storage. Sheesh. Anything actually moving? Everything's oversold, so I'm not going to look at the oversold indicators right now because everything is oversold. Let me see here what's on the move as of late. So we saw AION on the move here. Small cap name there. AION. What else? That's KuCoin shares. Not a whole lot. Power Pivot and Pivx. That was a day ago. It's probably been erased with this recent kapoop. But let's go look at it. Pivx. There's a name from yesteryear. Pivx. Yeah. Nah. It's probably about it. If you go to the watch list, the top BMI watch list, and just kind of look at what's kind of trending here. Yeah. AION. ETN. It's a little bit of strength there, but not a whole lot of love other than that. Link is probably the only one that's really holding up well, but it's all relative, right? It's holding up well, relatively speaking, because everything is getting the smackening right now. A lot of leverage longs getting liquidated here. Got to wash things out before the next rally. Got to clean the decks. Keeper network, yeah. I mean, today is obviously a bearish drop, but this has held some good relative strength as of late. Make a note of that guy there, KNC. Do I think the inverse head and shoulder on the weekly can play out now? Yes, absolutely. That's in fact what I'm betting on. I'm thinking that's what we're getting here. So let me clear this mess out here, and that's what I'm looking for here, right? This inverse head and shoulder. The neckline is going to basically be this resistance, which is a significant resistance zone when you look back at the history of Bitcoin. There's not a lot of time spent over 10K, and so that 10.5 mark is kind of the exact breakout point. However, the way I like to trade the inverse head and shoulder is I start to look for that right shoulder to bottom out, and when it looks like the low is in, then I get in early. I don't actually wait for the breakout, right? You get in before the breakout because then you look for a rally to the line, and at that point, maybe on the breakout, take a little bit of profit, wait for a throwback entry. There's a couple of ways to trade the inverse head and shoulder. I think I've got a video on it if you're curious about learning more on inverse head and shoulder strategies. Yeah, right here, double bottom, inverse head and shoulder, reversal patterns, 38-minute video. But that's what I look for. And there's a couple of ways. Obviously, if you don't catch the whole shoulder and you miss the breakout, then ideally you want to see like a rally, potential throwback to the neckline, and then the next leg up. But the measured move on this giant pattern that we're seeing form on the weekly chart projects to around $14,000 as the next target, which is this level highlighted. That also coincidentally is last year's high. If you look at the June 2019 high, basically fell a few bucks short of $14,000. And so that's going to be interesting to see that big pattern play out there. At that point, it gets real interesting because what you don't want to see is a rally to that 14,000, then a quick reversal that starts to look like a double top, right? You want to see it kind of just settle out near the highs and then ultimately blast through and make new all-time highs. I mean, that's ultimately what we're looking for. But for now, I'm thinking this dip here, forming a potential right shoulder. Maybe in the next 2-3 weeks, you consolidate, form that bottom, and then start to rally high. Getting back over 9,900, things really start to accelerate. But so that's the long answer for, yeah, I do think that we're going to see a potential inverse head and shoulder form. All right. What else should we do here? What program do I use to view these charts? Good question. I am way overdue with finishing my my course on this. There's going to be a free course on YouTube that I'm going to post here, but this is essentially Tradingview. In my opinion, hands down the best charting software out there. The fact that it's web-based, there's an app for it. You can also get a desktop app, but this is Tradingview. I'm going to do a tutorial that I'm going to wrap up here and kind of just give you ways to use it. There's a lot of things you can do with it. There's trading strategies and testers, and I've created proprietary indicators on this thing, and there's just so much you can do. It's amazing. And I've used a lot of trading software over the days, you know, for stocks and for other things as well, but hands down, Tradingview has got to be my favorites. But you know, here's just kind of give you an idea. I mean, I've got trading strategies that are automated here. I don't actually do any trading directly out of Tradingview. You could, I don't, but you can do paper trading, which is really cool. If you haven't done that, there's a paper trading option, and so you can hook up that. It'll give you an account, and you can start doing that. So I'm going to cover all that in my series here. It's going to be a long series, but it's going to kind of take you from zero to hero, if you will, on Tradingview. And of course, that'll also be eventually added to this video library here as well on the site. But it's what I'm using here, and if you're not familiar with it, I would certainly check it out. I used to use Coinigy a little bit, if that's how you say it. I don't anymore, for the most part. I think I still have my subscription paid through probably the end of this year, but after that, I'm not going to renew it. I pay enough for Tradingview because I use it so much. I use it for my stock trading. I pay for some additional extras because I do because I am looking at the stock, so I pay for some additional data feeds so I can get the live data out of the NYSE and the NYSE real time and some other things there. But this is my stock view, which Moderna is what we covered earlier. Looks like it's about to break out of this little standing base here. Interesting. Moderna. Coronavirus vaccine company. All right. All right, my friends. Bitcoin, red day today. Is it time to buy the dip? This is getting real interesting. We're certainly right smack in the middle of that buy zone. Big picture, though, 8,200. I want to see that bad boy hold. Below that, I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. But, okay, guys. Thanks for being here as always. I appreciate all of you guys. As always, you guys are usually 99.999% of you guys are fantastic, cordial, respectful. I like the comments. Good stuff as always. But we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care out there. Take it easy. Take it slow in this craziness of a market. We'll get back to it eventually. See you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone.